legislation?
Well, I'm here today because there's sort of a misconception out there, and we talk about paid sick leave, and we hear a lot about the benefits, but we don't hear so much about the unintended consequences. And that's something that needs to be considered in Connecticut. Connecticut would be the first state to do this. And a lot of the businesses that would be affected in manufacturing, retail, restaurant business, these are businesses with really low profit margins. They don't have a lot of room for sort of error, for new labor mandates. So when you do that, you wind up with fewer jobs for entry-level employees that need them most.
Okay, and a lot of the supporters of this legislation say it's a public health issue, that you don't want workers, especially maybe that work in restaurants, coming to work sick.
Well, you hear that a lot. Here's the funny thing: if you look in their own research, you see that 80% of the employers in San Francisco, following the paid sick leave mandate there, reported no reduction in employees coming to work sick. In fact, only 3% reported an improvement. So I think this sort of public health thing, it's a good talking point, but it's a statistical charade. It doesn't really show up in the evidence.
We'll just talk about the fact that I guess the argument from businesses is that it's going to cost them more money. Just talk about that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, when you talk about profit margins, it means for every dollar in revenue you're bringing in, if it's 2 to 3% profit margin, you're just bringing home 2 to 3 cents in profit. If you have a lot of employees that are already working near the minimum, that means that when their total compensation goes up, when they're paying more in benefits, wages have to go down. But if they're already earning the minimum, their wages can't adjust. That means fewer hours, it might mean fewer jobs, it might mean layoffs, but that's the sort of impact you can expect to see, and it's going to hurt the employees that are sort of most vulnerable and can least absorb it.
And you mentioned San Francisco. I guess San Francisco and Washington, I believe, are the two cities
Washington,
that have
D.C.,
have the two cities that have this policy in place.
Right, and it's interesting. They say there's been no effect in San Francisco. That's what the proponents say. But if you look at their own studies, low-wage employees, the employees working sort of in the bottom 20%, 30% of them reported reductions in hours or layoffs at their business following the implementation of this mandate. So really the evidence even that they're presenting, I think, shows that these sort of consequences are real and could likely occur in a state like Connecticut, even more so because you don't have the sort of built-in tourism here like they have in San Francisco.
We have a governor in the state that says he would support the bill if it gets to his desk. So is that a concern that Connecticut could become the first state to have this type of law?
It is a concern, and I think it's not the sort of thing that you necessarily want to be first in. There have been other states. I think Ohio's a good example where it was going to go on the ballot there. It ended up not going on the ballot, and I think in part there was a study from Cleveland State University that found that the cost of that mandate outweighed the benefits, again, for some of the same reasons we talked about here, and also because they warned that it could affect the state's competitive position. I think there are people talking about that now, whether doing this could also drive more jobs over the state line.
Right. If you can just elaborate about that aspect, potentially causing more jobs to leave the state.
Well, sure. I mean, if you have to pay an employee, a certain wage, plus you have to provide, so many days of sick leave, and it's easier to sort of, if you're on the border, it's easier to just do that on the other side of the border. Then, these are the sort of decisions that get factored in when employers sort of are thinking about where to put new locations. At the same time, even if they do decide to stay here, and I'm sure a lot of employers will, it's the adjustments they have to make. It's those things we talked about earlier, cutting back on staff, reducing hours. And I think the example everyone can sort of relate to is sort of people bag their own groceries now, and again, I think that's a direct consequence of rising labor costs, rising additional mandates. It's more expensive to hire people, and so employers find ways to do more with less, and oftentimes that means automating jobs that were previously done by sort of a low-wage entry-level employee.
So, again, you're here to express those thoughts to the Labor Committee?
Yeah, I'm here today to testify just about some of the consequences of Senate Bill 913.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Hey, have a great day.